this complex, this iconic Ritz Carlton Hotel by Panchshil Group. So the next presentation is going to be by architect Madhav Joshi, who will be presenting his thoughts, design process of designing the Ritz Carlton as well as the business bay. So architect Madhav Joshi, an architect from BKPS College of Architecture and an urban planner from IIT Kharagpur, heads Madhav Joshi and Associates, which he established in Pune in 1998. The studio is a hub of architectural creativity, designing projects that explore new frontiers of contextual modernism as a consciously adopted approach rather than a style. The firm is reputed for its unique architectural portfolio with projects ranging from hotels to high-end residences, housing, IT, and corporate offices to institutional campuses. The firm also undertakes master planning and urban design projects run by passionate designers. The studio specializes in avant-garde minimalistic design and is known for discerning choice of projects it undertakes and the intensity with which it works on them to the last detail. Madhav Joshi has won many awards for his work, the most notable ones being the J.K. Cement Green Architecture Award 2010, the J.K. Cement Architect of the Year Award 2011, J.K. Cement Indian Architecture Commendation Award 2013, J.K. Cement Green Architecture International Award 2015, CWAB Award 2016, and a long list of awards. So I request architect Madhav Joshi to come on stage.
Thank you, Ravi. Now, this is a different content altogether from what we've been listening since morning, and it has been so enriching to hear works of the masters from their disciples and the next generation. And in many ways, most of us have always learned from these masters and their masters as well. But before we sort of proceed, let me wake everybody up. Now, the reason being, the earlier presentations were about somebody who's not in the audience, and now I'm going to talk about selfie. But the selfie is never complete with the support that I always got from my team in my studio, my team of architects, creative architects who have been working with us and are working with us. So in a way, it's not a selfie of my alone. It's a larger group who was behind me in getting this project that I'm going to share, and of course many others that we have done so far. So on a lighter note, that's how I begin. Now, to speak of the theme of the day, which is the legacy of masters, in a way, everybody has looked up to many masters. There are many gurus in the audience, including my students and my seniors. I consider them gurus in different ways. Besides that, everybody has born and brought up in certain settings, which also leave behind a big impression on how you think and how you have observed things. And I would sort of dwell upon that aspect today, just to have an analogy about being my guru as my birthplace. Now, I'm born in Vai, which is a first temple town on River Krishna, and my upbringing and my childhood, my schooling, a lot of it happened in Vai. So I have seen a lot of buildings, a lot of wonderful places which are familiar to most of you. So there could be references of that to begin with. Can we start? Now, our office logo is this is a very popular motif, particularly among the landscape architects, as you have seen, and you could connect with the previous presentations with this logo, which comes from Mandu, and it belongs to a place called Neelkant in Mandu, and we have a particular reason for it to be our logo because it connects to the space more than its graphical significance. So it's actually a spiral which is a spillover for a water pond which goes further into the valley. And this reminds me of this quote from Le Corbusier: to be modern is not a fashion, it is a state. It is necessary to understand history, and who understands history knows how to find continuity between that which was, that which is, and that which will be. So in many ways, we've been talking about legacy, and my interpretation for this aspect or this theme has been sort of expressed in this quote. And therefore, I would like to sort of go back to my native place and look at certain images of that place where, it talks about a lot of detailing, meticulous precision of stonework, different use of material, significance of using of those material, and my interpretation about how and why they were used in a particular way. So, steps like this, approach to a temple complex, a famous place called Mainavli. Now, all these places have a strong sense of place. They are centers for cultural activities and architectural settings or landscape settings, or even if you want to call it urban or public realm, which is created by these places, are fantastic learning points. The way the water connects to the land and the articulation of the human intervention, which is Ghat, and how people use and interact with the water and use all these elements. All these elements which have been observed, used, and there was a time where we used to swim in this river, but not anymore. But there are places like these which will always, waterfronts, where you would interpret them in a useful way and learn a few things out of it. And then maybe you occasionally sit by the side of the Ghats and try to interpret it in a more graphical and abstract way. And all these interpretations actually come handy when you are trying to deploy certain learnings out of them. Like, for example, the reason I'm showing this is a stonework which indicates a potential rise of water level during floods. And the material which is stronger here will sort of be resilient against water and all the abuse that will be sort of thrown upon it during the flood time, while protecting the more fragile and more delicate materials, which is brick and wood, which is sort of perched up and floating above that. So these observations are interpreted in a different way in this project as well. So this is a setting that you have seen and grown up on a day-to-day basis. And of course, there are numerous expeditions with school teachers for doing landscape drawing, sketching on all these wonderful settings. And to talk about the interface with the waterfront and the build, there are various situations and various detailing which are negotiated by steps sometimes. And these images, which not literally sort of taken from here and used there, but they are there in your back of mind, and they come very handy when you are trying to, find solutions in a situation of your own project. So having learnings from that, there are certain projects that I would like to share. This connects you with the materials that I have been seen and, living in. The load-bearing walls of a school building. And then there's a gradual introduction of modern materials such as glass and other materials as stonecrete, fair finish concrete. the wall which is done by corbelling, and this is like pure load-bearing walls. So the vocabulary which has come and rooted in some learnings from the past has been reinterpreted to bring in a different vocabulary, which is in a way quite austere at times, but it has, there are attempts to be very pure and very minimal in the sense of, bringing elements together. So these are some of the other projects that I'm just rushing through, just to give you a very minimal cross-section of the type of work that we've been doing. Having come from this sort of a background, when you are sort of given an opportunity to do something in a marketplace at large, in a upcoming, highly urbanized, fast urbanizing place like Pune, then actually you are struck with a sense of responsibility. Although it's a wonderful opportunity, but that has to be taken with a strong understanding of responsibility, because you're going to do something on a green field which is going to last there forever, and it should sort of continue to establish some references for the development around it for times to come. And which is true in a way for all our projects that we approach. So this presentation is going to about this project, which we call Business Bay and Ritz Carlton, which is the entire project is designed as one design exercise, a kind of an urban design project, because it has a very strong interface with the city's arterial roads, and there are a lot of influences we had to interpret how to negotiate with the city traffic or contextual realities of this setting. For those who are not from Pune, actually this road leads to airport, and this is a major intra-city connection to Ahmednagar, and these are major roads within the city leading at a junction which popularly known as Pune Club Golf Course Junction. This is the site location. The surrounding development is sort of a low-grain settlement, which is a consolidated settlement of, let's say, urban poor. And this is mostly an institutional hub of many corporate buildings as well as government buildings and upcoming new facilities in the greenfield zone. Now, when you are actually dealing with a site which is 12.5 acres and the total construction area with a potential of 35 lakh square feet, you are looking at a huge building bulk, and then it's like a potter dealing with a huge sort of quantity of clay out of which he has to create something. So with that building bulk, you start wondering how you would sort of configure that to make a meaningful architectural proposition. Just to give you an idea, we have just scaled it down and broken it down to different segments. Now you can say out of this entire built-up area, construction area, 84% is the business bay, which is basically corporate offices of different companies, and all the facilities to support them, including parking, mechanical services, and things like that. And 16% is the Ritz Carlton area. And this breakup talks about how much is the actual usable or leasable space, which is about 39%, and remaining supporting areas such as, there's a landscape area which is about 4 acres of podium landscape, which is one of the largest in Pune at that time, and various other activities, including services and small support activities and parking. Likewise, the Ritz Carlton is also distributed among guest floors, public areas, back of the house areas, MEP parking, and hotel landscape. So, since I was talking about the potter and its clay, this is where you start thinking. There are processes which are not linear. There are processes which actually act in tandem, because you have to think about position of this site in the city flow, how the city is going to grow, and that is where you understand that your education in, say, urban planning or city planning comes to help you in a big way in shaping the architecture that you're going to propose. So here, we are just, it's an ambition of every architect when he is dealing with a project like this in a marketplace to make a landmark. Everybody wants to have a landmark. And we were actually thankful to the Panchshil group for inviting us to be part of this competition, which was a sort of an invited competition between our firm and overseas firm. And through that, they sort of selected this design, and now we can see. The process goes back to 2006. This entire process, this place has seen ups and downs of the market. So the pace of construction had been fast and slow at times. And now we are speaking about it in 2020. So it's a long drawn process for us, and we've been living with that and enduring all the challenges throughout that situation. Now, having said that, that time there were certain sort of a set of regulations which were prevailing at that time. And one of the rules which was on the horizon was to have buildings more than 100 meters or 100 meters, but that hadn't come yet. But we were sort of eager to check whether that kind of a proposition would work here. So there are various alterations that we were trying. So this was almost like a given built bulk of the hotel because of the program requirement. So we are depicting that in a very static volumetric representation, but there were possibilities of articulating this particular part, which is of the office complex, in different ways. Now, since this is a mixed land use development, the whole idea of positioning the hotel, which would become the most visible, iconic element in the whole complex, was very important. And as you have seen, the percentage of the building bulk which is taken up by the hotel is much less than what would be required for the office building. So the strategy was to use that as a backdrop, or not let that dominate the hotel, and hotel should enjoy a very prominent and visible position in all the possibilities that we were exploring. So having done that, this was a very ambitious proposition, just to have a maximum tower, and this is configured by the building bulk that I was talking about. There had to be a minimum footprint which is workable for the purpose which was being to be a corporate office or an IT office. So there had to be a requirement. I mean, there was a requirement of a minimum floor plate. So we're taking that, we were exploring various possibilities. So that floor plate could have been more also. So then you can restrict to 100 meters, which was the rule which was on the horizon. But here the important take was to sort of, you have to make your own sort of notion about the landmark in a city place or people's image in a different way. Doing a tall building, 140 meter is not tall enough to be in a landmark in a perpetuality. I mean, there'll be buildings eventually which will be coming, which could be even more. So there is, world over, there's a competition for making a building tall and tall. So that's a passe in our opinion. I mean, that is a very common path everybody would want to take. Although we explored that and sort of, deviated from it right in the beginning. And we tried to sort of position that building in a different way. But what we realized that it would help to sort of distribute the entire building bulk in different parcels, so that one, it can be easy on construction phasing. Secondly, and the most importantly, when you are creating a place, which is essentially a workplace and the large public realm here, you don't want the people who are going to be going there or working there to be intimidated by the scale of the building. So that was the position that we took. And we thought it would be a good idea to explore to make a more horizontal proposition, which is more human as compared to the tall building. And it would be easy to sort of digest or comprehend when you are in the connection with this building composition. And that's how we sort of went further and explored how low we can go in terms of spreading that mass which was required. And this is how we sort of ended up with. In doing so, our objective of bringing hotel as a prominent object in the whole composition was getting more and more clarity. And this was getting used as a backdrop to this, just to look at it from the street perspective. Of course, all that was backed up with a lot of thumb sketches. It's an ongoing process. We could able to dig out not all of them, but some of the sketches. You can see there is a idea of parallel walls being tried out here. The masses, the way they were being split horizontally, then you had to carry that language and also have a synergy between the hotel and the entire other components of the building. So this mass was also being thought to be split so that the building bulk is even made more palatable. Again, you can see this is playing as a backdrop to the hotel. And then a configuration of the hotel tower itself, they had it had seen a lot of possibilities, and we kind of settled down on something like this. Few hand sketches, studies, initial studies to understand how the proportions are going to come out, and how the volume can be further split in a stacked manner, and you can have some play with staggering of that. Now, this goes back to 2006. And the studies went on, and we sort of settled down on a scheme like this. Just to take you through it quickly, there are these two, what we call tower, but they're not tower in the sense of height. They are just 12-story buildings from the podium. So these are the office towers, and this is the hotel. This is a major arterial road leading to airport from Pune. This is another major road which is leading to Nagar Road. And this is a very important traffic junction that you can experience every day. Now, this is where you had to strategize where to enter what. And this is one project that we were able to successfully segregate. Normally, there's a discussion about segregation of pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic. But in the vehicular traffic also, you have two-wheelers and four-wheelers. And they also needs some sort of a segregation. So here, the four-wheelers actually enter from this point, and just breaking away from a convention of left in and right out, we sort of reversed it to go in right in so that I get more pile-up length away from the junction, important junction, and I get more length for the cars to do their security check and go inside and come out. Likewise, two-wheelers would enter from here, as well as the service vehicles would enter from here and not interfere with the vehicular movement like this. Likewise, comparatively, this road was considered more of a less traffic, but not anymore. But it is more convenient to approach this side from the airport for the guests arriving at the hotel. So this was a more logical solution, position for the hotel. Of course, it also is subjected to wonderful views toward the golf course, and the guest room would enjoy those views enormously, as you would see from the pool deck as well. So it has got three basements or three parking levels. This is a 4-acre podium landscape. We were fortunate enough to bring on board a very famous landscape architect from Lebanon, Vladimir Jurovic, which incidentally had also worked with Maki, Charles Correa, Foster, and I can say now with MJ. Just joking. But it was a wonderful contribution from his side as well, because he saw this landscape as a carpet laid in front of the hotel, and he had designed it. Now, when we were giving briefing to him, I showed him what I showed to you also. I showed many of the slides from my native place, why the guards, the water, the connection between the water and the land mass, and how humans have intervened in bringing that connect closer, and how things change in the flood situation, how things change in a festive season, and how the waterfront is used. And probably he carried those impressions well, and then he had interpreted it in his way. We'll see it in slides later on. So this is a ground floor or the podium level. Initially, this is actually planned as a high-end retail area, but and then which will be sort of connected with a pedestrian traversing route, which is through the landscape plaza. And there's a water garden here. So this is one area, Tower A, Tower B retail area, which are internally connected. And this is the hotel side of it at the podium level, where you can enter into the hotel at this particular level as well. So this energy between the corporate offices and a hotel is accentuated by creating this, encouraging this entry point here, so that you can continue, or you can book this place for your corporate meetings or corporate lunch or dinners, and there'll be a wonderful energy in this. There are two pavilions which were initially designed as a fine dine pavilion. Now one is converted into a gym and a creche, and another one is going to be a fine dine pavilion eventually. Just to quickly touch upon how the arrangement below the podium works, it's a lot of parking, more than 4,000 two-wheelers, 2,000 cars, and there's a circulation with a drop-off at every level. So essentially you enter through the parking areas into the towers with all the check-in mechanisms, with a lobby and control points at respective levels. You can see the ground floor. This is where we are actually sitting now. Sorry. Yeah. So this is the banquet hall, lobby, the restaurant, and a typical office floor plate, so which can be divided into two offices. That's the way it has been sort of used at the moment. There's one part of it is taken up by one company, so there are about 4 companies utilizing the whole floor space which was on the lease available. Tower A, Tower B, the plaza, and the hotel. Now you can see the scale in terms of its magnitude or the volume, and it's definitely more overpowering to the hotel itself, but the way you perceive it from the street or the as you are traversing around it, this comes as a prominent object. Now this is split axonometric. Just to explain it better, this is the retail area, and then there is a stack of 4 office floors, which is punctuated by a common area, which is essentially a refuge areas on either sides, and a cafeteria, which is used by respective offices. They can just walk down or walk up and utilize it during break hours. The whole idea about this composition was to, typically you would see office buildings, people disappear at 9 o'clock and they just come out from some place at 6 o'clock. But here I just wanted to attempt to bring the life more visible by creating spaces where people will step out and enjoy the elements, and also be visible to each other, to sort of enhance the sense of workplace and the energy that they share in between all this area. So as a workplace, this was very important aspect to bring people out and encourage that kind of interaction, not only with the fellow colleagues, but also to have a very good connect with the landscape. And that's where the whole idea about bringing the height down and proximity to the ground is working. Likewise, you can see this area at the lowermost where you have a lot of parking. All these gray areas are mechanical areas, the plant rooms and the DG and plumbing plant rooms and electrical substation and everything is a grade below. And the section, this is how it works. Now you would get an idea about the scale that I was talking about. Although it is spread horizontally, the entire building bulk is sort of disguised as a very simplistic arrangement of 2 or 4 volumes, although they pack 4 floors together and sort of express them as just one volume. And that helps to sort of bring down the scale to make it almost like a human scale when it's perceived from this level. And so I'll just explain, these are the 3 levels, 1 grade below the ground, there are 2 levels above the ground, all this is parking. Now this is the retail area, you get a connection to the retail area from this parking level, which is arrival level for the retailers, and these are the office floors, this is a common floor. Some details about the skin, which is very simplistic articulation of a typical glass facade with the use of 4 or 5 variants of transparencies and opacities of glass in order to create the desired thermal parameters, as well as, but more importantly, to break down this volume further into more articulated or more interesting facade than having just a huge reflecting surface. Now, one of the towers is constructed with precast technology, just to make up with the time lost during the period the project was going slow. So these details are of that particular block. And this is where I can refer back to my sketches from Y, where you would see the stone pedestal or the podium, which is sort of there to endure the floods. Now, in a way, you are also fascinated by that juxtaposition of long horizontal lines and vertical other masses which are perched up, which are lighter in nature because of either it's a brick or wood structure. Likewise, there's a strategy followed here. Everything at this level is all solid stone, and which is floating above is lighter materials. Now, the analogy of flood, the way we were interpreting in our studio was that, the streets with high volumes of traffic, noise, is kind of a flood which can be interpreted as a threat or the nuisance. So you have to sort of negotiate that either by distance or a barrier. Now here, distance wasn't a possibility because you are dealing with an urban plot. So creating a barrier of this nature was one way. Secondly, there's a huge garden above, which is a public garden, which can be accessed from the stairs, and you can utilize that. And when you are up there, you're sort of away from the traffic and noise. Third, more sociological concern, which was very important to us, was that by virtue or by, you need not say virtue, but by the reality of its position, it's surrounded by a development which actually brings out the disparity between the two economies in an urban place. And you don't want to make that more evident, so you don't want to bring in that tension by dealing with the idea of creating public realm in a usual way by, creating some plazas here and have penetration of people, because that would have just, compared those two diversified worlds face to face. So putting up a silent face was a very careful strategy. Of course, it is hiding behind all the parking areas and mechanical areas as well. So for every urban project, creating urban realm may have different strategies. This is a sort of a ramp created to help fire engine to reach onto the podium. And you can see the podium, which is about 4 acres large. These are 2 pavilions. Now, this is the work of Vladimir, where he has sort of picked up on the linearity. Our initial design intent was dealing with linearity, but in this direction. But then he interpreted it differently and very modestly and politely told me that, we had to do this because we thought this would work better with the hotel. And we were more than happy the day he was on board. And so he actually taken that idea further and, excelled it in his own way. Now, so this is the water feature that he had created with the idea and like an urban forest. Now, this was his interpretation of the river and the ghats, where, in the monsoon it gets flooded, and in other times it sort of is available for traversing. And then he uniquely designed this for this project, taking cues from the facade idea of mosaic of glass pattern. He wanted to mimic that on the floor plate as well. And that's how you would see the entire synergy between the landscape and the facade comes live. Some pavilions that he had designed. And then there are these, some of the images of the entire complex, from various positions. Lobbies for respective towers that we have designed. The drop-off areas. Now you can see a glimpse of hotel, and this is the route which goes into the hotel from the podium side. Now coming on to the hotel exercise, because hotel, conceptually it was sort of conceived at the first go itself, but it took some time to sort of work upon it with the program which was changing with the operator's requirement. But in essence, it remained what we had conceived, but sort of some details were modified to accommodate the new program as well. So here you can see the initial study of this to be positioned as a prominent object in the entire composition, while these blocks play as backdrops to it. So these are some initial renders that we had done for understanding, developing the concept. So this is from the roadside. This is where you approach. This is the porch. We are sitting inside here. There's a pool deck, some night renders. Just to explain you quickly, we are sitting in this hall now. The podium stage is on this side. This is a pre-function and this is outdoor function areas. This is a grand lobby. This is a 3-meal restaurant. There's this alfresco dining area outside that. And rest of this gray area is part of the business bay. So there is a possibility of sharing parking when it's required at the lowermost level. As you go up at the pool deck intermediate level, there are more function rooms there, a specialty restaurant which can open out, and this is a mini ballroom which opens out in another function area. The pool deck level, these are very schematic drawings, we'll see more detailed drawings. What happened was after the business bay project sort of got completed, there was a pause in between that construction and the initiation of construction of hotel. And during that process, Vladimir could not continue as a landscape architect onto the hotel project. So owners asked us to sort of take up that job with much humbleness, with a lot of effort to sort of bring him back. We realized that we have to take it up because the language of architecture and landscape, it's so much in sync that probably we could sort of pull it off. But then I have no knowledge of plants, and Jayant was kind enough to be on the board without any conditions, and he supported us wholeheartedly in bringing this to reality. Typical floors. There are about 200 rooms, suites on the corner. There's a presidential suite also on the top. So in the section, it looks like this. Just to make it more simple, let's see. This is all is entrance area, or the level 2 as we call it, is a public area. Now this is all back of the house area. This is podium level lobby, then pool service area. There's a sort of a subfloor below the pool also, which connects to other service area directly for all the pipings and everything. Now this is again public area where you have the spa at the back, the gym, the saloon and everything, which sort of spills out into the pool deck area. This is a transfer floor for service in the structure, and then the typical guest floor area. Again at the top you have executive guest lounge where there's a specialty restaurant, fine dine restaurant, and the executive lounge. And of course, all the MEP areas perched up on the top. Right below, you have one level of parking and MEP areas where all the plant rooms are positioned. And this is the porch that you arrived in from. Just to have a similar exploded isometric view, this is the arrival area, on top of which is the pool deck and a bar and a grill. Then all these public areas, there's a specialty restaurant onto this side. There's a Japanese restaurant which has got a small alfresco area as well. This is podium level outdoor function area, which is connected to a small junior ballroom as we call it, just right above this. So they have equally big space for functions right above this as well. So you can have big outdoor events in that area. And of course, all of them are serviced wonderfully with connections from the kitchen and the back of the house. Then this is a typical guest floor, executive floor, and MEP area. So all the cooling towers, everything is sort of very compactly arranged in this entire envelope. Just to speak of publicness, this was a sort of an ongoing thought in the entire process, that you wanted to bring in some visual connection of people who are using different facilities and encourage them to use this public space at any given point. So this graphics actually represents that in a different way. And that's how the whole composition sort of came into place. Some of the renders. This is the podium level with sort of articulated with parallel walls to take care of the oblique nature of the plot line and create a language of its own. Now these are some of the real views just to take you around. Of course, you can walk around in the break. So this is the arrival area, the business bay. Now the landscape is getting mature day by day. This is from the podium side. This is from the refuge area of the Tower A. This is how you get to see it from the street. We had a lot of consultants for this project, particularly for the hotel part of it. The interior is done by a firm from Bangkok called PIA. So they are largely responsible for most of the interiors. There's a Japanese architect, Sanara-san from Japan, who worked on the specialty restaurants. And there are a whole list of consultants specialized in kitchen design and various other aspects. We were dealing with the facade detailing and the landscape detailing entirely, and with a local contractor to execute the entire job. This is where we approached today morning, the drop-off area. This is how you will get a view in the evening. And then let's look at the landscape part of it. There are 4 areas predominantly. There's the front arrival zone, hotel entry, arrival and setback areas, the marginal areas, which are represented in this drawing. So what you look at here is the outdoor function where we had lunch. This is al fresco dining, which is a spillover of the dining area, and some cross sections to understand how things are positioned in terms of its levels and heights. Some initial studies, and that's how you sort of have a. Then this is a detailed al fresco dining for 3-meal area, which is this area. So the language, the linear language continues in the landscape as well. Some of the cross sections to understand how the entire arrangement is done. So outdoor party area, just outside the pre-function area here. This is a cross section of that. This is the parking below, the water feature. This is the outdoor party lounge just above this ballroom. The pool deck. The pool deck has got a lower deck and upper deck. Now this is particularly for guests who are using the pool. So there are some reclining chairs and cabanas there. And there is a nice bar and grill arrangement with some pavilion for sitting. The cross section, there's a service floor under the pool also, which is just above the lobby. And this is the recent picture of that area. This is the bar and the grill here, and some sitting area under the pavilion and outdoor area. This is part of the specialty restaurant, which is a Japanese restaurant, and this view is from its al fresco outdoor area. This is again pool area, pool deck area. This is Japanese restaurant, and then overall pictures. So that's how you see the Ritz Carlton from the pool deck level, or rather podium. So that's our team, all in the crowd. Thank you. Thank you.